one big problem we have as humans is our ability to repress. Well, it's not actually a problem. It has a function, especially in our complex social world. But the issue is that we learn how to repress our emotions, and we repress them so much that we don't know how to access them again. So in my example, when I was a kid, I received messages that said that it was unsafe for me to express myself. My mother and stepfather were very unhappy people. I believe that they were from a generation with a lot of people who were like that. They just had no idea how to raise healthy human beings who are capable of expressing themselves and being emotional. You can just tell that by the way they are, and some of their families that I met and stuff. And because of that, they themselves were very grumpy, unhappy, negative people in a lot of pain. Very easily triggered, very easily made to feel that they were, you know, just unhappy people. And because of that, pretty much everything that us kids could have done annoyed them. So largely the household was built up of rules, even unspoken rules regarding us expressing ourselves, because anything that we would say or do would pretty much trigger our parents. So I learned very fast to not say anything. I couldn't express any kind of emotion, even positive emotions, because we would be teased. And it makes sense why they were like this, because I feel it as well. I feel all these things that my parents had inside me too. I struggle with similar stuff. But anything I could have expressed, I just didn't feel safe to do so. If I had any thoughts or feelings or emotions of any kinds, I just stopped them coming out. Naturally, I was angry, but I didn't really know how angry I was until I got older. The anger came out in many different ways. As I got older, a lot of drug abuse and issues in relationships and emotional issues and all the typical stuff that happens when you have a childhood that's highly repressive and restrictive like that. So yeah, I learned very quickly that I couldn't be myself. It was dangerous to be myself, and this essentially became a habit. I started to be fearful of people disliking me because it was such a problem as a kid, that if my parents were unhappy, like for example, if my mother was unhappy with me, she would just ignore me and essentially punish me for weeks. My stepfather would become violent. So I learned that if I caused people to be unhappy with me, it was very, very painful for me. So I would try to alter the way I was in order to make everyone around me happy or at least not triggered. And this lasted my whole life, this habit, this fear of upsetting people around me. And I believe we all have this to some extent, because who is healed, who had healed parents who are able to not traumatize their children. A lot of what we call normal society is just traumatizing people into fitting into this mold, which makes sense. It's not wrong. In order to survive in a largely populated place, then we kind of have to have these rules, right? But it completely wrecked my ability to be myself. Completely. I was so fucked up in so many ways. And I had to take a lot of drugs and alcohol in order to function socially. It just allowed me to feel a bit freer. I was a social person, but so completely repressed that I felt so uncomfortable around people because I was so terrified of upsetting them. If I did upset them, it was like the end of the world, which it was as when I was a kid, so it makes perfect sense. It also makes perfect sense why someone like that would take drugs and drink alcohol. People judge people who do it, but I never do, because I shouldn't say never, but sometimes they can be annoying. But I try not to, because I have been there and there was no other option. Psychology and philosophy and self-help and the people around us and psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors and all of that stuff, all of them, the medications you can get prescribed, all of the guidance counselors you can see at school, it all completely failed because they're all unhealed people themselves who had no idea how to fix this stuff. They would just give you practical advice, which was completely useless. I don't blame them. We're from a generation of failure in this regard. It is what it is. But I didn't have a choice. I used drugs because I needed to survive socially in a world that was just too painful for me to keep going. So I held on to this repressive attitude, right? I still have it now to some degree, right? And you forget it's pushed down so severely that you forget it's even there. You forget that there is anger there, or that there is grief there, or you don't even know how to access it. It's just experienced like pain or weirdness in the body or headaches or weird behaviors that you don't understand, weird social reactions. Sometimes the anger isn't even anger. Sometimes the sadness isn't sadness. Sometimes you're really sad, but you're just angry all the time, and that's all you can feel, but really it's just sadness. It's confusing, and we just don't know because we've been doing it our whole lives. It's just stuffed somewhere dark that we can't access. So here we come to the point of this video. How do we access it? And the Killer Bee Inquiries is one place that I kind of got this idea originally, but I don't particularly agree with the way that they do it. They try to ask questions that give you the opposite, like, for example, if say you hate yourself and you believe that to be true, they will say, I love myself, and then try to get a reaction, like a no reaction. This never worked for me, and it doesn't work for a lot of people that I know. The best way that I've seen and found is that we assume we are the things that we're not sure about, and we ask questions to the little child within. So I know that seems confusing, but for example, why do you hate yourself? Why do you feel that you're not good enough? Why do your parents not love you? We need to go to the places that we don't really want to go. We make these assumptions. We think these thoughts like, my parents don't love me, and then we straight away are trained to think, yeah, they do, it's fine, and then dismiss it. But this comes from somewhere. This comes from our repression that we can't see. These aren't to be dismissed. Why does everyone hate me? Let's look at that. Where do you feel that in the body? Feel that. Be in that place. Why am I a failure? Why will I never be happy? Things like that. Ask these questions. Ask these very difficult questions to the body and see what it brings up for you. Go to these places that you don't want to go in the body, and these questions bring it up. Why does everyone hate me? Can be felt. It can be felt as a sadness in the stomach, an anger in the chest, a sensation somewhere in the body that is triggered by this question. And be there with it until it's released. Thanks, guys.